Hello Exalted, this is Fusion Gaming and welcome to a bit of a change in our today's video. So as I was coming to the end of my league in Path of Exile, I have kind of achieved everything that I wanted to achieve. A friend of mine obviously mentioned that Last Epoch is going to be released in about 3 weeks time, which it is. It's going to be released around about the 21st of February. And it's going to be 1.0 in terms of the release. Now, to put that into comparison, that is basically similar how to Path of Exile. Obviously, that is when in strong boxes and the similar type of content was introduced into the game. That is basically how it compares in terms of Last Epoch. Now, I have heard of Last Epoch. I have heard of it being, the name has been floated around and it has been doing very well. It has had quite a few updates, releases. One of my friends has been playing it since 2018 and he said that since then the game has changed massively. I know that a few content creators have also influenced the game in some way as well. They have put their spin on it and they have approached the developers, and the developers have reached out and said, what would you feel would help the community, what is going to be good, and they have taken all feedback on board, and I believe that they have then introduced that into the game. So I thought, fuck it, what the hell, let's have a go. So I bought it on Sunday and we've been playing it ever since. So I just wanted to give my first thoughts and first reactions onto the game and what I believe are the good points and the bad points around the game, and then we will go from there. I'm going to address the game via a few points which I've put on screen here. So first of all, we will discuss the classes and the type of classes that you can get. We'll discuss the campaign, or the axe, or whatever you want to call it in terms of the actual campaign it is. We'll discuss the end game in terms of what you can do in the end game and what type of varieties there are. And then we'll also discuss items and the forging and crafting that you can do within this game, because it is very unique and I find it very fun, and it is very cool, and I wish that more games would adopt this type of crafting style. So without further ado, let's jump into the classes. So as you can see right now, there are currently 5 classes that you can play. Now all 5 of these will then split out into other types of classes. So we're going to run through them all one by one very quickly. So first of all, you have a Sentinel. Now Sentinel obviously seems to me like to be one of the strong characters. Obviously you can then upgrade him into or spec into Void Knight, Forge Guard, all of which obviously have their own sentiments in terms of their skills. Now you can, if you wanted to, put some skills into Sentinel and Void Knight and Forge Guard and Paladin. It's entirely up to you. If you wanted, let's just say, one of these auras or one of these skills on the mastery class, then you can just allocate into that. Now I obviously didn't select this class, so I'm not that familiar with this guy, but this is one class. Next one is a rogue style class. So obviously you can either be knives, bows, you got a blades, marksman, falconer. Now falconer is the new class which is going to be released, which is not new class, sorry, new mastery, which is going to be released on 21st of February, and there is already a video online to kind of showcase the skills that are within that class. But for now we have blade dancer and marksman, and obviously this is how I see is a bit of a mixture in terms of like Path of Exile. It's kind of like a bit of a ranger, but with a little bit more to it, and kind of like a marksman slash blade. You could say rogue like D4. So it's a bit of a mixture. After that, we then have what I would then say is kind of like a witch, but obviously he isn't. He's a bit of a mixture. So he's a mage, he is a sorcerer, he is a spellblade, and we can do rune master as well. So you can kind of synchronize into certain elements, obviously fire, lightning, cold. You can do all these types of good things, but it all seems to be like elementally from what I have seen. One of my buddies is playing this build at the moment, and he said he is very powerful. However, he does sometimes just get one shot because he is a little bit squish. So there is obviously the downside there. Next class is the class that I picked, which is Druid. Now you can go into Primalist, Beastmaster, Shaman, and Druid. Now obviously you can then change into this lovely bear and demolish everything, or you can run with like type of minions and Spriggans, or you can have raptors on one of them. Yeah, you can summon a raptor, summon a bear, saber-tooth, scorpions. You decide, whatever you want. Me personally, I have run for the Druid class, and I have done this Swarm Blade form. So that is the build that I have done, where I literally turn into a little bugs and run around and cast tornadoes, and kind of similar to a bit of a Blade Vortex. I summon like this Maelstrom, which kind of spins around me. So I'll showcase that in a bit. And then the last one is what I would then say is a bit of a Necromancer. You can be Acrolite, Necromancer, bit of a Lich, and again there is a new class or mastery coming from Warlock, which will be released in 1.0. Again, looks very, very cool. I have not played this class, but one of my mates is doing it, and he is very much enjoying the skeletal mages and obviously the abominations and the wraiths and all that good stuff, and he's summoning so many skeletons and everything. So they are the classes. Now let's discuss campaign. So the campaign, if you was to kind of compare it, it is very different to Path of Exile. There is no acts, so to speak. There is no like set amount of acts. So similar to Path of Exile, obviously you have to go through all 10 acts and you have to kill Katavi before you can get to maps. There is kind of a bit of a kind of a blockade there in terms of you cannot get to maps unless you do that. Whereas in Last Epoch, it's kind of the opposite. One of my friends told me that once you get to around about level 25, 26, you could literally jump to the end game if you really wanted to. Which to me is I'm struggling to kind of wrap my head around that, because imagine if you just literally got to Act 3 in Path of Exile, and then at that point they could turn around and say, right now you could do maps. It would be quite daunting, I would expect. So I am a little bit concerned about that, but I didn't do that. What I did was I stayed on doing the campaign until I got to around about the 50s. I think it was around about level 52. And at that point, I got to the point where my buddy, who's obviously been playing this game for quite some time, said, you don't need to finish the acts. You don't need to finish the campaign. He said, because if you look down here, you've managed to achieve all of your passive points. You've managed to get all of your idle slot rewards and all of your passive points. So you don't need to progress any further. Everything else that's within this, which obviously bounces around, which I will discuss in a second, is literally just going to give me experience and gold. There is nothing really else in the acts other than experience and gold. That's it. Which he said there's no point. You may as well continue. You may as well jump to the end game, because you're going to get a hell of a lot more gold and a hell of a lot more experience. To jump back to the campaign, there is one con that I would say, and I would say this is it's very all over the place. Now, I kind of guess that that's what it's about. So you kind of jump time traveling. So at one point you're in like the divine era here, which is obviously it's got a bit of a timestamp here of -12 BE. Then you jump to the imperial, which is then the same place, but it's in the future. As you can see here, obviously it's the same place, but it's now in the future. It's now 1005 AG. Then you jump even further, and the place looks like it's been demolished, and it's a bit of a shambles, and you're kind of specking up here, and you're going over here. And this is the ruined era. And then at some point you then bounce back to the ancient era, and again it's the same place, but it looks completely different, and you start finding dinosaurs and all that type of funky stuff. And then you jump back to divine, then back to ancient, and as you can imagine, it's kind of a bit all over the place. But I will say I enjoyed it. Even with the time hopping back and forth from all of these different eras, I very much enjoyed it. And it was a very fun playthrough. First of all, I was kind of gathering how to play the game, learning the skills, learning the passive skill tree type thing that they have, the mastery system, and all of that good stuff. And then when you've done all of this, you can then jump to the end of time, which is then you then come to this place here, and this is basically the end game. And I'm going to zoom out here for you, and you then progress up this path, and you progress all the way up here until we get to this top 3 kind of trio of islands here, which is there we then do the end game. Now, in terms of the end game, obviously in comparison to Path of Exile, and I am going to keep comparing it because obviously I'm a long mainstream player of Path of Exile, there is no maps, and the only way that I could probably say is that they have this thing that's called monoliths instead. So you click on this monolith, and then this very much reminds me of something like Synthesis League. You have all of these like little platforms and things that you will breach off. So you start here, and it then usually branches off into 3 areas, and then from there once you've done that, it'll then branch off again and then branch off again, and it kind of does that for a long time. Basically, your objective is to basically complete these zones, which obviously within these zones they provide you with certain types of rewards. So this one here obviously provides you with tomes of experience. In the bottom right corner, I can't move my mouse, but in the bottom right corner there it says Echo Rewards. So it gives you experience, it gives you stability, timeline stability, and up to bonus timeline stability. So the whole objective here is to do as many of these as you can to kind of fill up this Spirits of Fire timeline stability bar at the top of your screen. Now every time you hit one of these padlock stages here, which are on the left hand side here just for clarity, every time you hit one of them you can then complete that quest. As you can imagine, they get a little bit harder and harder, and as you get to the 3rd quest, which is the last one here, that is then the boss of that realm. Now once you've completed that boss, you will then be rewarded with sometimes a blessing. Now with a blessing, that is like a permanent reward that you can then add to your character. So for example, my character does a lot of lightning damage, and its main source of damage is lightning damage, and I luckily managed to get this blessing, which gives me 57% increased lightning damage. Now ideally you want to fill up all of these blessings, which I am in the middle of trying to do, but you can then, as you can see, this blue circle that is around it, I'm going to assume that that signifies the level of the actual blessing. So as you can see here, this is a 57 roll, but as you can see, the range is up to 60. So because I am still 3% away, that's why this little blue circle is nearly all the way, but it's just not quite. So ideally, if you wanted to min-max your character, you want all of these to be maximum rolled. Now every time you do one of these islands, you will then get a blessing. Okay, so basically it's a case of that you could do all of these, and then you can then rerun certain blessings and rerun certain islands over and over and over again until you get your blessings maxed out. So there are some end game content. So there is a Lightless Arbor key, which obviously has a particular dungeon. There is a Soulfire Bastion key, Arena key, and a Sanctum key. Now I haven't done these first 2, so I'm not going to discuss those, but basically they are dungeons that you have to complete. The Arena key is very similar to like a simulacrum in waves in Path of Exile. However, the waves can scale to be infinite. There is a gentleman that's in the game at the moment that has managed to get to wave 2330. Now you can see what character he's playing here, the build that he's doing, and the skills that he has gone. So he has gone into Summon Volatile Zombie, and there is a bit of a ladder here in game. So if you wanted to try and get to the top of the ladder, then obviously you can kind of see what skills people are playing. This is on softcore. You can also go into hardcore, and you can see that in hardcore they've only managed to get to wave 650. So as you can imagine, it's a lot harder in hardcore. The final key is a Sanctum key, which is when you can combine and you can smash a unique item with a exalted item. So you could smash 2 items together. So for example, this unique here at the bottom of the implicits, it does say that it has 2 legendary potential. That basically means that if I smashed this weapon with this sword, it would randomly take 2 of the modifiers, so 2 of the stats, and drag them across to this, and you would then have all of your unique mods as well as an extra 2 mods. Now that to me is ridiculously OP, and that I have not got that far yet, just because I am looking for a particular scepter and I am looking for a particular mod which I haven't seen yet. So, but when I do that, I am going to merge both of these together, and it is going to be a very fun experience. Now I'm going to quickly talk about the items here. So again, in reference to Path of Exile, yes, there is pretty much the same items, apart from the fact that this has one more set of items. So this has a relic. So whilst we would have in Path of Exile obviously a chest, 2 weapon slots, a helmet, an amulet, 2 rings, a belt, boots and gloves, this has an extra slot which is for a relic, which basically can give you a bunch of other mods and things like that. There are also then idols, which are permanent idols that you can put into your gear that will then provide you with a bunch of extra stats, extra crit chance, extra spell damage. If you're lacking in some resistances, then it will provide you with that lacking material. One thing I would like to add as well is that there is a lot more resistances as there is in Path of Exile. Now thankfully I have managed to overcap them, and I am still in the middle of trying to balance all of these, but as you can imagine in Path of Exile we're only used to balancing 4: chaos, fire, cold and lightning. Whereas here you have to kind of balance your fire, your lightning, your cold, physical, poison, necrotic and void. So as you can imagine there is a lot more to balance, and it's a little bit harder in terms of trying to balance them all. So as you can see here, I have overcapped on pretty much nearly all of them, and apart from lightning, which I managed to get bang on, which I am pretty good at. I'm pretty happy with this resistances. I'm pretty happy that I am pretty level across the board. So one thing I would like to discuss is the itemization and items that you actually then get. There are obviously a whole bunch of stuff. The main currency, or one of the main currencies that you do get in this game, is gold, which I do kind of like, because I am going to be having to get used to playing with gold for Path of Exile 2, since as that is going to be introduced into the main game for Path of Exile 2. Also, there is no per se utility flasks, so you can't use any utility flasks. You literally just have just general health potions. Now one thing that I do absolutely love about this game, and I wish that Path of Exile would have something similar, I'm just killing these monsters nearby so you can see, is that they basically, you drop these shards. Now with these shards, what happens is you would use them for crafting. Now let's say all of these on screen. In Path of Exile you would have to go click, 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 and you would have to pick all them up, whereas in last Epoch you press once and it picks them all up in one go. Now I wish that Path of Exile would have something similar in respects of that we could pick up all currency items that were nearby all in one click. That would be amazing. Once I realized that that's what that did, I was amazed and I really enjoyed it. In terms of the graphics of the game, it is very smooth, it's very polished. The graphic does feel very meaty. You can actually feel the damage, you can see the crits. I don't have any negatives in terms of the actual damage. You can actually feel the damage that you do to monsters, but you can also feel the damage that they do. A lot of the abilities that bosses and enemies will do are usually synchronized, so you will see like a detail or an effect on the floor as a bit of a warning as to what's going to happen, and you can then move out of the way. In the big boss fights, that is definitely required, because there are some boss mechanics that will literally just one-shot you if you don't get out of them. Now once you have completed the actual quest within your monolith or your map, whatever you want to call it, you can then open a free portal and instantaneously transport you back to this kind of like holding area. Now what I do love is the time that it takes for you to go back. There is no loading screens. There is literally instantaneous from map to holding area. And you then get 2 sets of rewards. You get a reward for the actual map, which you just saw me pick up there, which was some experience, and you get this chest. Now if you die within the area, within the map, or within the quest that you are doing, you do not get the rewards. So it's a case of it's within your best interests to stay alive. Another thing that I would like to add as well is what I was showing you earlier about these like shards and everything that you pick up all at once. Yes, they do take up your inventory, but you do not have to put them in any of your stash space, which we will come back to in a minute. You have a dedicated window which is literally just for all of your shards. Literally like this. Now if I want to move them, I press one button and they all move instantly. Again, I absolutely love that mechanic and how you can actually just move everything instantly. In terms of stash tabs, I do love the fact that you can have an infinite amount of stash tabs. You just need to buy them with gold. So at the moment, if I wanted to buy a new stash tab, it's going to cost me 50,000 gold, whereas at the moment I have 388,000 gold. I could probably earn 50,000 gold in about an hour of farming, doing maps and things. So it's a case of that you can have as many as you want, and you can set up like categories as I've put here. So I've done one for idols, just to throw all my idols in. I've done one with a bunch of random rares while I was leveling. Every single unique that I get, I slap it in here just so I can have a read of it and learn what they are, what they do. I've got one with, again, just a bunch of random rares. All exalted items, which I will come onto in a second. All keys, again, which I'll come onto in a second. And then I have stuff that I want to shatter, which we'll talk to about when we're crafting. Now, when you're in high tier maps, the best items will drop as exalted items, which are this purple style glow. Just to kind of take it back a step, whilst you're in the axe, you will get magic items, which are blue, yellow items, which are yellow, and you will then get the odd unique. It's very rare. And you will then start to get exalted items once you start doing higher tier maps and higher tier like monoliths. Exalted items will have one modifier, as you can see on here, which is in purple. Now that purple mod is then always either a tier 6 or a tier 5, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong in that, but it's usually a tier 6 mod. And I believe it can sometimes go to a tier 7 if you do a bit of upgrading later on down the line. I've not learnt the full mechanics of it yet, but you can then start to fuck about. Now these are the best items that you want to be crafting on. So we're just going to take an item. I don't know which one we're going to take. We're just going to just grab one that I may not have done anything with, and we're going to have a mess around with it. So I'm going to show you now the crafting element of the game. So once you get to a certain point in the campaign, you will then unlock the forge. Now with the forge, you then literally have it as a hotkey that you could just press F at any point and start to then craft items. So let's say I am not happy with this. Let's say I did fire damage, so I'm going to keep the fire damage. I need health regen, and the ward gain on potion use is locked in. I cannot change that. But let's say I am lacking in one particular skill or one particular resistance, let's say. So what you do is you press this plus, you bring up the suffixes, and you can then pick what you want. So if I want to craft on, let's say I'm missing lightning resist, it then puts in a lightning shard, and I can then craft it. Now there is also a second thing here, which is called a glyph of hope, which then grants a 25% chance to cost no forging potential. So every single item that drops, as you can see there in the implicit, has a particular amount of forging potential. This one is quite high. It has 45 forging potential. So that means that if I craft onto this, it then tells me down here that it's just spent 11 forging potential, and it has given me 6 lightning resistance. Now if I wanted to upgrade that, I would do it again. It's now used 7, and the tier of the lightning resist is now gone up a further 8. So I'm going to do it once more. That one preserved, so it didn't cost me anything, and it gave me another 7. Now what I want to do is, let's say I want to increase this fire damage. Let's increase it. That is now done what's called a crit success. So it actually gave me increased fire damage, and it increased the health regen at the same time. It did both, which is very nice when it does that. So I now have a tier 5, which is the max roll that you can do in this screen for crafting. But let's say for some reason, and again, like I said, I'm just showing you this just so you understand, I want to re-roll this lightning resistance. Let's say I don't want that, okay? I can put on this what's called a glyph of chaos, and what it will do is it will just randomly re-roll this suffix into something random. This has then given me armor and reduced bonus damage taken from crit strikes, which I don't know why, but it says here 715, which is a bit of a random. I don't know why it says that, but okay. If that is not what I wanted, then I can roll it again and press again. And now I've got void resistance. Now let's say I needed void resistance, that's perfect, but as you can see down here, I am using my forging potential. Now I only have 12 left, so let's say I wanted to upgrade this health regen, because this is the last thing that's on this item, I can do. Then you can literally press that and upgrade it, and now it's tier 5, tier 5, tier 5 and tier 6. The tiers of these items are the reverse of Path of Exile. So in Path of Exile you want obviously a tier 1, whereas in Last Epoch, the higher the number, the better the tier of that item. So as you can see, this has got decent fire damage, decent ward gained on potion use, health regen and void resistance, and you can do this for any item in the game. Now let's say I didn't want this item, I can then just shatter it, and what it then does is it then has a chance to break down all 4 of these, and it will then give you these shards back. And it tells you here, look, 4 void resistance shards, 4 ward gain on potion shards, 2 fire damage and health shards, and they all go back automatically into your shard window. There are obviously other elements, so you can re-roll the affixes. You can use a rune of removal, which is similar to a orb of annulment. You can use a rune of discovery, which adds a random one to all, adds a random affix to an empty slot. You can re-roll the implicits, and then there is a rune of research, which is kind of like a fracture, so you can fracture an item, but it has to be a certain type of base. There is a rune here which turns any item into a guaranteed unique, but it could be any unique. And this last one, I haven't seen it drop yet, so I cannot tell you what it does. So, but from what I've done so far in the crafting, it is very, very fun, and it's very, very unique. What I would like to say as well is that the itemization is very smooth, it's very polished. It's a case of that if you are missing something on an item, so if you needed some potential certain types of resistance for your build, then you can literally just craft that onto an item and you can then get it onto your items. The last thing that I wanted to discuss is the skill tree. So this is the kind of passive skill tree that you pick from. So you have 4 classes that you can pick from. So you have the Primalist, I have the Shaman, the Beastmaster and the Druid. So every time you level up, you can then put your points into these, and this will obviously then make your skills better and more powerful, and it makes you stronger as well. So as you can imagine, this obviously as you level up, it then adds these points across the bottom, and it then unlocks certain skills as well at the bottom. So once you get to a certain point, you can then unlock other skills. You can also specialize in 5 potential skills. So as you can see here, I am specializing into tornadoes, and I've got Maelstrom, I've got Serpent Strike, I've got Summon Spriggan, and I've got Swarmblade Form. So basically you would have all of these different skills. You have to pick 5, and then you can then kind of spec into them even further. So this one gives further damage, this one gives mana efficiency, this one has haste stacks, this one provides frenzy stacks. We have one which has less lightnings cast every second. So you can then start to tweak each skill individually, which I do like very much. It's kind of like being able to edit with Blade Vortex or Herald of Thunder, and be able to increase the frequency, decrease the mana cost, all that type of good stuff. It is very fun. What I would like to say is, if you're thinking how do you change them, you can respec out of them, but what I will advise you is that if you do respec out, you lose all of the experience. So you have to basically kill or gain experience in these items, so kind of like skill gems in Path of Exile. However, when you take that skill gem out, you still preserve the XP, whereas in Last Epoch you don't. If I was to unspec this skill, I would lose all 20 levels of experience. So if I then put in a new skill, I would then have to then level it up again manually from square one, from level 1. So that is probably the only downside that I would say. But once you have leveled into a particular type of build, it is very easy for you to respec, chop and change. There's no need to then start leveling through the campaign again unless you want to change class. Other than that though, in terms of the game, it is very smooth, it is very polished. I feel that a lot of people are going to be playing it on the 21st of February, and I think that it is going to be a very fun launch for 11th hour games who are releasing the game. What I will add is that the game is not free. It does cost at the moment $29. It is on the Steam store. There is obviously an MTX shop, but everything else within the game is obviously free. So it's a case of that if you wanted to go to the shop and you wanted to go to buy some stuff, which at the moment is quite basic, it's not as extensive as Path of Exile's shop. This is literally it. So as you can see here, it's like one screen. And there is a supporter pack as well, so you can buy Eternal Traveler, Templar, Vanquisher and Eternal Legend supporter packs. And they're not that expensive either, as you can see here. Compared to the likes of Path of Exile, you can potentially get the top supporter pack here, and you can obviously get quite a few mods and pets and gear customization, and also portals. Other than that though, the game is very smooth, it's very polished. I am enjoying the hell out of it. I'm just enjoying the farming and trying to find these items to then get the best items to be able to do. And then what I want to try and do is I am going to have a go at the arena, because I want to see how far I can push the build and see how many waves I can do on my build, because I've been told that this build can be relatively tanky. Other than that guys, if you have any other comments in regards to the game, maybe you've played the game and you've enjoyed it, maybe you didn't enjoy it, maybe you did, maybe you played it back in 2018-19 when it had just been released, there was a few bugs with it, I would strongly recommend that you revisit it again now, kind of get back to grips with it again, based on the fact that the 1.0 is being released on the 21st of February. Until the next video guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was my first reaction of this game, and I look forward to making a few more in the future. The next video that I will be doing, obviously for Path of Exile content, will be on Harbinger, and I will be putting that on my channel. So if you are a Path of Exile player, check out my channel. There is a bunch of Path of Exile videos on there, and league content and guides and stuff to do with ways to bulk sell, things like that. Check them out. Until the next video guys, stay sane Exiles.